Okay, here we're going to show you how to create a Windows SharePoint 2010 developer workstation. This is just one of the methodologies that you can use to create this. However, this one's been tested by me maybe a dozen times and it works. So, do whatever you want. First thing you're going to need to know is required software. You're going to need to be running Windows 7, Ultimate, or Enterprise, and I suggest Service Pack 1. It has to be a 64-bit box because SharePoint 2010 is 64 bits. I suggest a minimum of 4 gigs of memory. It may run on less, I don't know, but I really would suggest more than that, but okay. You're going to need the SharePoint prerequisites. You're going to need to download them, and I'll show you that. And then you're going to need either SharePoint Exec, which is Foundation, or Office Server Exec, which is Enterprise. And I run Office Server Exec. There's some gotchas. You need to run all this stuff as administrator. I suggest you be logged on as administrator on your workstation. If SQL is installed, in my experience, the SharePoint installation will fail. Now maybe you can get it to work. I have never been able to get it to work, get the SharePoint installation to work when SQL was already installed. So just be aware of that. You can give it a shot if you want. If it doesn't work, you need to uninstall SQL. Windows UAC, user account control, may cause you problems. I work in business intelligence. I'm going to produce another video after I'm done this one on how to set up SharePoint for business intelligence. And there the UAC will cause you endless problems, as it will when you're running the UAC when you're running a report server. If you're running SQL 2012 Express and you're using report server, or any of the report servers, UAC will cause you many problems. I9 may cause you some problems. There you're going to have to take SharePoint and put it into the local intranet group, which I'll show you later on. There is, as you're running around the web, you may find a SharePoint 2010 Easy Setup script. Great idea. You know, it doesn't work. I don't know what you want me to say. It does not work, and it is not supported. I've complained about it, heard nothing back, but whatever. You know, it just doesn't work, and I think it was probably just abandoned. Writing these scripts, by the way, to install SharePoint with all the vagrancies, etc., variances, and URLs moving, it's not the easiest thing you ever did. At least they tried. Step 1, you're going to open a browser and you're going to go to the URL shown, or you're going to search for setting up a development environment for SharePoint 2010 on Windows 7. Step 2, you're going to create a folder and you're going to name that folder Prerequisites. You'll download all of the prerequisites that are required for SharePoint 2010. Then you're going to execute them as administrator. If they are not needed or they fail, it won't cause you any problems at all. You just get a little pop-up that'll say it's not applicable to your computer or it's already installed. Step 3, you're going to create another folder on your C drive, and it doesn't have to be C drive, I just say that. But anyway, name it SharePoint Files, no white space. Then you're going to download and install either the SharePoint Exec for Foundation or Office Server into the SharePoint Files folder that you just created. Step 4, from a command prompt, which you'll be running as administrator, you're going to execute the command shown. It's also on the URL and you can copy it on over. You're going to extract out the files because you're going to need to do a modification. That modification is of the config file. You're going to use Notepad to open the config file in SharePoint Files, the folder you created after you've extracted it, the Files folder, the Setup folder, config XML, and you will open that in Notepad. Then you would do the modification shown. You can copy that modification, the element setting, on over. If you're not familiar with XML, by the way, XML is case sensitive. If you're typing this out, be very careful. Don't fat finger any of this stuff. And you're going to type that on in and then you'll save it. It will allow you to save any old Mickey Mouse stuff. It just won't work. So be careful of this one. Step 7, you're going to configure IIS. Microsoft has really helped us here. You're going to copy over from the URL that I showed you at the beginning the commands, and then you're going to paste them into a command prompt and run them, and it'll take a little bit to run, and then you will have IIS fully configured. If you read the URL, which I suggest before you start, it will tell you then that you can go in and check IIS to make sure everything was properly configured. I personally would not waste my time. I've never seen it to fail. Then you install SharePoint. Smoking. All right, so from your SharePoint files, you locate Setup Exec, right-click it, run it as administrator. Always choose stand alone. Right? If you choose on a workstation, the server farm, it will fail. You're going to choose stand alone and just let it run. All right? On success, you can run the wizard. You can choose to run it at a later time. In the wizard, you go through and create your own SharePoint site. Once you're done that, you can go back in. Now you can install SQL. It won't bother you whatsoever. You're going to need SQL if you're going to do business intelligence, which is a separate video I'm going to do a little bit later on. And you can search for Ron Davis MCT, or you can subscribe to my channel, whatever that means. And you'll get a notification when I do these uploads. Now we'll switch over to the video demonstration. As you can tell from this little preamble, I do all this stuff live. So sometimes I do a slip of the tongue. That was a demonstration. If I do, I would try to note that I just did a slip of the tongue when I come back through and do an edit. Here we go. Okay, now we're going to go through and actually install SharePoint on this Windows 7 machine. By the way, this Windows 7 is Enterprise, and I'm running it on an evaluation license. So I've done some of this ahead of time in order to keep some of the tasks a little slow. And remember, the first thing I have you doing, I'm going to open the Internet Explorer, and I'm going to go in here, and we've got this setting up the development environment. And so again, just like I showed you in the PowerPoint, you can go ahead and search for, quit that. Oh, so irritating. Setting up development environment for SharePoint, and this is your main instructions that you're going to use. However, some of this will lead you astray, so if you would, pay attention. Now, a couple of things I'm going to do ahead of time. I went over into the file system, and I set up file SharePoint prerequisites and file SharePoint files, right? And if you notice down here, I've actually gone through and downloaded SharePoint Server, but I'll come back to that in just a little bit. Let's go back over to the URLs. And what you need is you need the prerequisites. If you go through and read this, it'll tell you that when you, after you extract out the file system, after you extract out SharePoint, there are prerequisites, and you can run this prerequisite install exec, right? And that will fail on you on a client. It'll come through and it won't fail on you. You're going to need to do this manually. So what you need is a listing of these prerequisites, and as you see, I've got them all up in here. All right, as I showed you, dropping on down, and what you're going to do is I'd suggest that you stop the video right here, and you're going to go in and you're going to search for each one of these, and you're going to go through and download them into a file, SharePoint prerequisites. After you have them all down, you can go through and do the installation. Remember, if you've got SQL installed already, other than Express, it's probably going to, it being SharePoint, it's probably not going to install for you, but you can give it a shot if you don't believe me. I don't blame you. I don't know if I believe me. So you can download all of these. You'll just simply take their name and switch over to Google or the search engine of your choice, whatever, all right, and do the search. Such as SQL Server 2008 ADO MSI, and then go into the URL. I do not provide the URLs because URLs change all the time. It's better to go in and search for them. So now you're going to download the .NET Framework 3.5 and install it. These are all of the ones that, these are the prereqs that I listed right over in here. Microsoft Chart Controls for .NET Framework. I work in business intelligence and I need these. Here's a .NET Framework 3.5. I guess I already showed you that. Now I'm showing you just how to do a search. SQL Client MSI. When you do that, you want to pick the version of SQL Client MSI that's going to match your version of SQL that you'll eventually have installed. And here's R2. Or if you want to back up, you can go to 2008 or 2005. If you're still running 2005, the land of dinosaurs. Anyway, okay, 2008 or up to 2012, and pick the MSI, the SQL, and come down and install that. Now, if you notice down here, when we're coming in and I'm searching for SQL Server 2008 ADO, that's going to take me over into a feature pack. Where do I get that? This is the same thing. That'll take you into. Here you go. No, it won't. Well, let me just show you that. SQL 2008 feature pack. All right, so this feature pack is going to come down, and that is the same feature pack that would have installed the SQL client for that, wherever I did that little search in there, somewhere in there. Well, when I did that search for SQL client, if I want that version, when I bring back the feature pack for SQL, that will install them both. But just go ahead down and install and bring them on down. If you bring the same thing down twice, you're still in good shape. Windows Identity Foundation, SharePoint will fail without Windows Identity Foundation installed. So again, if you have all of those down in your prereqs, you're going to have them right here. Then you're simply going to go through and run the installations by double-clicking them. Nothing fascinating down here. You'll double-click and you'll run them on through. By the way, you notice I've already applied Windows Service Pack 1, and applying that Service Pack is going to overcome, I think, this one, maybe that one. Let's test to make sure I've got Service Pack. WinVer. Bink. Cool. Service Pack 1. All right, so I've got the Service Pack applied. As a matter of fact, I would suggest apply all the updates to the box before you go through and do these installations. So now I've already gone through and done all these. I'm going to go ahead and run it just to show you one. Yeah. Next. Install. All right, let me pause. Okay, so I came through and I just double-clicked and ran all of those. I didn't run the Win Service Pack 1. I've already got that installed. So I came through and ran them all. Now let's switch back over to IE. And I went in and I did a search. Let's open a new tab and go into Google. Okay, so I went in for SharePoint 2010 Enterprise Evaluation Download. Now, if you actually own it, then you don't need to do this. And if I come over that download, it'll pop on up, and here's my downloads down here like this. By the way, you might as well go ahead and take that key right now, copy it on out, and let's just go through and do this, and SharePoint Files. And I'm going to right-click down here, New Text Document, and I'll call this Key, Clever, for my evaluation, and I'll paste that on in. There's a number of different evaluations. Let me show you that. Here we go. But if you notice, they all have the same key, so don't be concerned with it down here. Just pick the the evaluation version that you want to work with. All right, so then you'll go through and download it. When you download it, click Save As, and you're going to save it into, you can save it into your download folder if you want, but life is easier if you would have come through and created a file, SharePoint Files, and saved SharePoint Server Exec into SharePoint Files. Now we're going to go through and extract that SharePoint file so that we can modify the configuration in order to allow a client install. I'm going to go Start, and I'm going to open a command prompt by simply typing CMD. And now I've got a command prompt open. I'm going to switch over to the proper directory. CD, clever. C, colon, and if I don't fat finger it, SharePoint Files. I think that's what I call it. We'll see. There we go, in SharePoint Files. And let's just make sure that's where we're at. Yeah, we're good. Okay, now we're going to go through and we're going to do the extraction. Let me type the command. Okay, I paused that so that you wouldn't have to watch me fat finger stuff. So I typed the command, SharePoint, I'm over here in the C, SharePoint Files, SharePoint Server Exec, space, / extract, :C, SharePoint Files, and now we'll go through and execute it. Okay, and once it's done, and the command line, she'll come back and she'll show you a prompt again. You can just minimize the command because you're going to need it again. So we're going to go back over, and now you see all of our files are extracted on out. Now you're going to go on up, and you're going to find the folder Files and double-click it, the folder Setup and double-click it. You're going to right-click Config, and you're going to say Open with Notepad. Bink! And here's what we've got down here, and we need to make a change. All right, now the easiest way, in my view, to do this is if you go back over to that setting up a development environment URL and scroll on down. Here's the XML you need to change. However, if you just copy and paste all of this in, it will fail. So we're going to copy, allow access, we're going to cheat. I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to move below my XML file. I'm going to paste it on in. And the only thing I really want is this, the element setting with its attribute ID allow Windows Client install. I'm going to copy that, Control C. And now I'm going to paste it here, Control V. And I'm going to dump out the rest of this. Okay, by the way, you can hand type it in. If you do, make sure that your case, watch your casing, because XML is case sensitive. So now we'll go File. Now you're going to go Save As, right? Because otherwise you're going to append .txt to it, and we're going to go All Files. And when you say Save, it should say, do you want to replace it? If it doesn't, you've done something wrong because you're saving it with the wrong extension. Say Yes. All right, and now you can close that on out. Okay, and switch back over to the main URL with the instructions and drill on down and find this business down in here where you modify IIS, and you're going to copy all of this by clicking copy. Oh, I already allowed access, so that's good. Switch back over to your command prompt. You're going to right click here and select paste, right? And we've got all this. Now I'm going to hit enter and allow, right there, and allow it to run. This is going to take some time, so go get a cup of coffee. I'm going to pause the video. Okay, it's finished here. You can see it's finished because we went back over to a command prompt and we're done. So we can close this command prompt. All right, now I switched back over to SharePoint files, and here's Setup Exec, and I'm already logged on as administrator. And by the way, I set UAC to minimum, just so you can see how to do that. You know, which could be a risky thing. I've got UEC already set up to never notify, don't ever irritate me, because it causes you all kinds of problems on a workstation when you're actually working within business intelligence and creating reports and all. So whatever, I'm going to cancel it out. I just wanted to show you that. So now I'm down here at Setup Exec, and I am logged on as administrator, so I'll double click it. And I get this enter your product key. I'm going to go back over to the key file that I saved, downloaded this key, and I'll copy it. Switch back over to SharePoint Exec, paste it in. Blah, 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 blah. All right, now if we get continue, it worked. Otherwise, you get a big red, you communist. Click on through there. Agree. And, you might go through and read that, first person in history. Click continue. You're going to select stand alone. There's only two options. Stand alone, which probably will work, or server farm, which will fail. So you say, take a chance at it working, or guaranteed failure. Stand alone. All right, now it's going to take a year or two to install, and I'll pause the video. Okay, when it's finished, we're going to run the configuration wizard. Next. Warning. Yeah. Next. Okay, again, go suck down more coffee. We're on 2 of 10. It's got to go all the way through, and it's going to take it some time. Okay, and when she's done, configuration is successful. Click Finish. IE will open up. The website will attempt to start. You'll get a logon screen. Then you'll get to select a template. Your templates are going to vary depending on whether you installed Foundation Server or Enterprise Server. So I'm going to come over here to Enterprise, and I'm going to select Business Intelligence Center, because Business Intelligence is where I spend my life. And I'll say OK. This will go into the green spiral of death. Then you'll get to the group page, and we're just going to accept the defaults and say OK. And up opens the site. You might add it into your favorites and whatever you want to call it. And from this point forward, we would go through and install SQL, which is the subject of another video.